You hear people talk about like life-changing moments, and it's one of those things that I always kind of scoffed at. Like, come on, like who actually has like a moment where you come home like my life has changed? Oh my god! Like it's really kind of like extra, but it happened to me. I went to not to get dark or heavy with you guys. When I was 15, I actually lost my brother in an accident. It was really sad, traumatic. It was 6 months to the day after that. I had been listening to music a lot, and it really kind of blew my mind how much music like made me feel things, kind of like broke down the barriers of like emotion that I put up for myself and like let me feel sad or happy or what have you. 6 months to the day after he passed, I went to go see a guitarist named Buckethead. I don't know if anybody knows who Buckethead is, but he's awesome. He's played with like Primus, and he was actually in Guns N' Roses for a little bit, although that was a terrible tenure, and I don't suggest any of you listen to it. But he's like this amazingly evocative guitar player who I saw in Oakland on November 23rd, 2008. And I remember feeling like my life was being changed in the moment. I was like, oh my god, like this is actually happening. Like, what's going on right now? And then when I got home from the show, my buddy had a guitar just like sitting in his room, and I was like, I want to play it. We were like listening to Jimi Hendrix, and I was like terribly searching for notes, but every time I played a note that was a right note, I like was so excited. So that was actually like a paradigm shift in my life in 2008, was seeing Buckethead. It's a few different things. The blues in particular is like a vocabulary. So if you go and you play a bunch of like Led Zeppelin solos or like Pink Floyd solos, you're basically gonna learn a bunch of licks that everybody's heard before. So if you hear like we all heard that in like an Eagles song or something. Like Joe Walsh probably played that like a million times, you know. Like that's straight out of like Jimi Hendrix's playbook and stuff like that. So you kind of take a bunch of different licks and you use them in like a vocabulary, and it's not like saying a sentence. Like everybody said the word that I'm saying before, but if they put this sentence together exactly, probably. But still, there is like a certain individuality to the way that you put all the things together. And then there are other aspects, like when I was doing the legato stuff, like that sort of playing has less of a vocabulary to it, and it's more so kind of like going for a vibe. Like, I want to play fast right now, I want that texture, or like I really want this huge bend with this big like, you know, like a really big vibrato-y bend that just sounds huge. So like it's a combination of like vocabulary and then just kind of like, I want to hear this. You know, like I remember when I was a little kid and I hear like a Metallica solo and I'd be like, Kirk Hammett played that wrong. Like he should have gone here instead of there. So there was like a little bit of like conception of what I want to hear, but it really is, a lot of it comes down to vocabulary, and then once you get that, you start to, it makes it easier to branch out. You know, it's like I can fall back on a lick, and if I have that, then I can play around it and make a bunch of other decisions, but that lick is steady and it'll kind of keep you grounded in a sense. It is the worst thing in the whole world. It completely destroyed an entire industry of artists. It ruined an entire group of people who were trying to make music I mean, I'm not going to get political here or whatever, but statistically speaking, the number of lives it destroyed because of lockdowns and holding down artists and people who are actually out there trying to make music is, I don't consider it to really be tenable. It feels like we sacrifice the lives of young people for the sake of older people, and we sacrifice people who lived more active lives in the community for people who had more remote ways of operating in the world, and we all kind of took it as a way to be like, okay, well, we don't have to be together, we can all just separate ourselves from each other as long as we're safe. And I think that really, personally speaking, I think it misses a lot of what makes people and humans, and we all live through our phones so much now that like it seems like we can have a sense of community while being locked away in a room, which is the way I lived throughout a lot of high school, but it didn't work for me. And I learned after going to college and playing out and seeing live music that the world, like, and humanity has so much to gain from being, I mean, even going to like a sporting event, you know, like it doesn't matter, like go to a football game or a baseball game, there's a sense of like camaraderie and togetherness, and everybody sort of going, like a political rally, you know, you could go to see your ex-candidate or whatever, and everyone is together feeling the same things, and there's really a huge sense of community that comes from that. And the amount to which COVID completely, or the reaction to COVID more so, completely uprooted the entire music scene. I mean, I was supposed to go. I was going to be the guitar tech for well, he's canceled now, but Marilyn Manson and Rob Zombie. So we were going, like, I had my ticket booked to Japan to be John Five's guitar tech. We were going on a full world tour. It was going to be Japan, Australia, China, all of Europe. It was all ready to go. First gig was going to be in March of 2020, and gig never happened. I sat in Washington, D.C. for a whole year, and then eventually moved back in with my parents at almost 30 years old, which, I mean, that a lot of people these days who are my age do still live with their parents, which is a shame, but I like had a life. You know, and I'm not feeling like, oh man, I'm so pissed I'm back here in Cloverdale with you kids. Like, no, I'm happy to be here, but at the same time, like, I had a life, you know, in Los Angeles that was like a life I had carved out for myself, and like an actual existence of making money doing what I loved and like being a part of what I loved. And the problem with COVID is that, like, there are a lot of established artists, like you know who wasn't screwed by, or who wasn't messed up by COVID, was like Guns N' Roses. Okay, like Guns N' Roses is never gonna not sell out a stadium. So it's like, okay, we can put off 2 years of not touring, and we're still gonna be fine. But the middling musicians, the musicians who actually put their music out there by playing for new crowds who decided to go out that night, it's, oh, it's Friday night, okay, we'll go see the show. That whole scene, dead. All those musicians out of work. Everybody had to, I mean, so many people went to go get different jobs. There's a huge rate of suicide in the art world right now because people are just not, because the entire industry fell apart. And I'm not going to try to make a value judgment about we'd say, you know, the death rates of COVID or hospitalization rates, or even the you know, the long COVID things that, oh, people lose their sense of taste for years or have like foggy brains and stuff like that. I mean, there are lots of obviously terrible things that came from COVID, and it makes a lot of sense that we as a society decided to do something about it. I mean, it would be lockdowns or you know, pushing for vaccines super hard, all that stuff. You know, that there's a lot of value to be gleaned from that. But I think in that process, there was definitely a lot of like not caring about the negative aspects. Like, oh, well, people could die, so any negative aspects of lockdowns are like stupid and you're anti life, you know, which to me, I think over time we're going to start to see the long-term impacts of the way it's impacted. COVID and lockdowns have influenced a lot of industries, but of course I'm really sensitive to the art industry. And it's really funny because you tend to see a lot of COVID lockdown stuff was divided along political lines. Like if you're on the right, you are anti-vaccine, anti-lockdown, anti-mask. If you're on the left, you're pro-vaccine, pro-lockdown, pro-mask. And the music industry, artists in particular, are largely progressive on the left side of the aisle type of people. But I can guarantee you on my feeds, on Instagram, on everybody I know, these largely, you know, progressive people were staunchly anti-lockdown. Like, this needs to end now, which is something you don't see, and it was also something you don't really hear talked about in the press. It's like, no, they weren't a bunch of like, you know, Bible-bumping Trumpers who are saying, let's end the lockdown. There was a bunch of like progressive musicians who were saying, listen, this is impacting my livelihood and like my ability to make art and like put things out into the world, and now I need to go get a job for like Intuit or something, or go work for some mega corporation, you know, which nobody wants to see. So yeah, I hope I didn't get too political with that, but yeah.
Hi, I'm Max Harper.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Shea.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Souza.
I'm Gabby Stouffer.
And I'm Miriam Polito.